older citation. Why? I guess I'm supposed to wait. You know, when I used to speak, I'd get her done. We'd get started on time and we'd end on time. And after...
See, what you said really moved them and they're still in the bathroom.
You know, I don't think I beat on the plastics bad enough. You know, and the hormonal disruptors. What Shanna Swan said, how bad plastics were for hormones. But you look at the nanoparticles. Didn't I have it over the ear? Thank you. So here we are. Is cancer genetic? Nope. And they're saying 5 to 10% might be. All right, but let me show you how this lie continues to perpetuate. Oh, the first reported case of cancer documented probably 1500 BC in Egypt in a mummy. All right. So we look at where we're at, Nixon declaring war on cancer, and common myths about cancer. Cancer is genetic, so there's nothing I can do to prevent it. Well, it's what you put in your pie hole, what you put on your body, and all the other things, all right? The food I eat doesn't prevent cancer or help fight it. Oh, yeah? Things in my environment will not cause, help, or prevent. People with cancer should rest. You know, we're not going to talk more about cancer other than to understand a little bit of the genetics behind it. Every day, more than 40 children are diagnosed with cancer. All right? Cancer is not going away. It's getting worse. From 1 in 25 to 1 in 2.5, getting worse. You see, I hate wearing this wireless because I don't like having wireless interfere with my... Now I'm going to talk about that, you know, because so it's there. All right, now we get the CDCs. I really like these folks. Look at this. They talk about something called an exposome. Exposome would be one of those things on the outer circle of my model. It's what you're exposed to in the environment. That's all it means. It could have a name like epimutagen. It could be called an anthropogen, an inflammasome, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anything that's going to disrupt the body. But notice what they say right there. Unfortunately, genetics has been found to account for only 10%. Now, why is that unfortunate? I just love that wording. Because it means they can't make money. But they do anyway, because we wait till we're sick, till we're going to do something. This is why the alarm is going off today. I'm calling you to it. When we look at an exposome, look in the upper left there. You saw my chart, and here is what the CDC called an exposome. And now you're starting to get introduced to that gene right there in the center. It's the sand in the gears that screws us up. It might be hormone disruptors. It might be estrogen hormone disruptors. It might be EMFs, RFs, radio frequencies, EMFs. It might be. It might be off-gassing from the carpet. It might be that you're wearing polyester. It might be that you're wearing cotton and wool. All cotton, by the way. Somebody texted me yesterday and said, are you aware the Bible says this in Deuteronomy about don't wear two types of cloth? And I said, yes. Probably has to do with acupuncture meridians. I'll introduce you to that. All right? And how it all works into it. You know, I lay awake at night wondering why Teflon sticks to a pan, but food doesn't stick to a Teflon. Or why are there interstate highways in Hawaii? I mean, phew. You get it. I'm the weird one. All right, the genetics of cancer. Let me back up. Look how they still perpetuate that myth right there. All right? Then we go to National Cancer Institute through the National Institutes of Health. Yes, it is genetic. No, it's not the genes you were born with. You see, they keep playing with it. It was, yes, because when we look at a strand of DNA, 6 to 9 feet long, what happens is each one of those rungs in that barcode is telling your body to make something or turn off something. Either it turns it on, turns it off. It's flipping a switch, on or off. And it's all the other things that screw it up. That's what exposomes and all that stuff is. You see, you understand more about genetics right now than your doctor does. Because they're still asking, well, does it run in your family? Well, your mother has it, therefore you're going to get it. Whatever it might be. Metabolic changes from inflammation, reactive oxygen species, and mitochondrial damage. All right, free radicals damage mitochondria, epigenetic changes, all those things. Epigenetic is just all those things on the outer circle, nothing more. Epigenetics is considered to be an important mechanism, an unknown etiology of many diseases. Yeah, how about all diseases? It's this simple. My friends can't believe I actually put this in there. Well, they haven't seen it. But how true it is, right? When we look at that gene, notice what's going on. There we go. I'm going to back up one. Right there, you got those, you've got that chromosome all wrapped around something called a histone. Doesn't matter. What happens is when that gene wraps around that thing, it can't be read. That's off. When it can be read, it's on. That's how simple it is, kind of like us men. All right, so what will happen is when you look at that gene right there, where I circled the red, that's on. All right, that's how simple it is. A gene is on. It's either going to suppress cancer. You need to have pro, or you wouldn't have growth. You see, you have to flip about 50 to 55 switches, they figure, the experts do. I didn't calculate this, but they figure about 50 to 55 you have to snap on in order to develop cancer. You got a lot of chances. Just keep trying. You might get it. All right, then we got all that stuff that messes it up. The epimutagens, anthropogens, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It gets much more complicated. So we're going to go back to a simple model and look at it. You see, when we look at genetics, all of these things filter it. Stress, all right? How you were raised. And does that come back to what I was talking about with soul surgery? What was going on in the family of origin where you were raised? I shared with you about my dad. I know my dad loved me, right? He just didn't say it. That would be an epigenetic mechanism to the 3rd and 4th generation. In fact, I was teaching this one time, and doctor said, well, Dr. Peterson, you don't believe in the theory of evolution, do you? I smiled, because this is going to lead into clean and unclean foods. So anyhow, I smiled and I said, I went to a pre-med, pre-law school as a chemical pre-med student. That was where I was headed. I don't know why, God. I decided I didn't want to be an allopath. Aced the MCAT, could have gone to any medical school. I was the only kid at this school, that was on a full ride scholarship because my dad didn't make a lot of money. He loved me though. He was there, but he did what he could. Every event I had, he was there. Went up to the U of M to be a chemical engineer, all right? Anyhow, because I like this kind of stuff. But anyhow, she says, so you don't believe in, and I said, well, I wrote a paper in 1974, in January of 1974, on outer spacemen being the missing link in the theory of evolution. I got an A from a science prof and an English prof. We had to read all of Darwin's books and write a paper. That was my paper. Outer spacemen were the missing link. Got an A. I said, I believed in it. I said, let me ask you this, doctor. When they do a trans-species transplant, what species do they use? In other words, when they use another animal and they're going to transplant an organ, what animal do they use? Pork. She answered me, porcine. You know, if you're going to get, a cornea or a heart valve, pork. I said, you're right. And I said, if they're going to use a hormone, what animal do they use? And she said, porcine. I said, you're right. Why is that? Well, there's less chance of rejection. I said, are you telling me we're closer to a pig genetically than we are a monkey? No, I didn't do that part. But anyhow, I said, there's monkeys dying in zoos every day. Why don't they take their heart valves? What about the hormones? Is this why God told us not to eat pork? I told you I'd tie it into genetics. You see, pigs have a 4-hour transit time from the time they eat till the time they excrete. They're dirty, dirty animals, and they'll eat anything. They'll eat their own feces. Why would you want to eat it? I love ham. I love lobster. I was probably one of few sitting in San Francisco, back in the 90s, ordering lobster tail as surf and turf. That was my favorite. Fisherman's Wharf, they don't have cows and they don't have lobsters. I loved it. But now I care about my health. But when my friends, when we had pizza, I ate one just because, I wanted to show it's not about legalism. I can do it. But I was having dinner at International Plaza several weeks ago. Some friends were in town visiting, and so I met them over there for dinner. And he's a naturopath back in Indiana, and he said, tell me more about, cross-species specificity. Why certain companies use porcine in their thing, because it has a greater crossover. And I said, and I told that story. And he said, you don't believe in evolution? I said, Bud, you don't want to go there. I was ready to take on Hawkins and, Dawkins and Hawkins on evolution, because it's ludicrous to believe that we evolved out of a great explosion. Number one, you'd have to have hemoglobin and a heartbeat at the same time, or it couldn't exist. Why haven't there been any jet airplanes put together with a tornado going through a junkyard? That would be easier to do than it would be to do that. So anyhow, you didn't get the full 20-hour seminar, thank goodness. Inbred. So here are some of the topics that I just was thinking about that maybe we'll discuss in the future. If you want to do this, I understand the church is open first Saturdays. I'm happy to do it. Won't be quite so much work. A week ago, I had 560 slides. I saved all my edits. A lot of it was scripture. So I have a lot of what I need to do it. Talking about the topics on that outer circle, all that stuff is things that I taught. Things that I want to teach you so that you understand, and you can go from there. But again, let's look at grace and, faith. Faith in Him also means, trusting in His timing. But God's redemption at Christ's expense. I told you I like acronyms. Came up with one for hope, new hope. Helping others pursue eternity. But I may keep that for me. No, actually, I'd give that to him. But anyhow, isn't that what we're all here to do? See, this is where the break was supposed to be. So you're going to have to go read Galatians 5:15 to 18 on your own. Because all that says is don't be a Judaizer. Don't be a Judaizer. We're not doing this. I don't not eat pork. Oh, pork is kind of like sin. I mean, if sin wasn't fun and we enjoyed it, it'd be easy to avoid it, wouldn't it? So, when we look at that, we need to remember, what he did, and where we're going and how we're going to get there. But my people die for lack of knowledge. And again, I want to pick the pace up a little bit. I'm a little bit behind on the time. That's okay. Some of it I'm going to really fly through. You're probably thinking, Greg, why didn't you fly through that part about genetics? Look at this. This is from a journal from the pharmaceutical industry. Isn't that interesting? European Molecular Biology Organization. As the business literature shows, new clinical diagnoses are often welcomed primarily as opportunities for market growth. Did you know that you're a market growth? For every dollar that a pharmaceutical industry spends on advertisement, DTC, direct-to-consumer advertising, they get at least a $3 return on investment. Look at that. Yeah, wow. This article ran last fall. I can't believe it didn't make the mainstream media. All right. Why should I be surprised? Right here, the pharmaceutical industry is dangerous to health, further proof with COVID-19. You see, some of the things I'm going to talk about is because you've already been desensitized because of COVID-19. I mean, I did not have time to go out and get my mask. It's in my door. But I had a cheesecloth mask when I finally had to break down. At first I wrote myself an ADA exemption that I had, a respiratory illness and I signed it so you couldn't read it. I mean, that's the first thing you learn in doctor school is how to write your signature so nobody can read it. So I printed that up, and then it got to a point where, I needed groceries and they weren't going to accept it. So I wore a cheesecloth. I almost wrote placebo on it, but I thought that's just too in your face. And, it just... This whole thing is there. Now, you see what's highlighted in green? Here's what it says. And I'm not going to read it to you. You can see it. What he's saying is the pharmaceutical industry controls you, controls medicine. Well, why doesn't my medical doctor? Kirk, what was it? 3 of your 5 medical doctors are dead? He's nodding. Yeah. Why? Because you know what? They took the jab. I don't know how many of you did, and I'm glad nobody wore a mask in here, because you won't feel good pretty soon. I never did. My cheesecloth mask was it. I put a paper out there to my docs about the only reason for masks, and this was published in the Journal of American Medical Association, was so the surgeon doesn't spittle into the patient. That's it. I mean, how is it? If flatulence can't be stopped by a pair of underwear and jeans, how is that going to stop a virus? That's like a tennis racket stopping a mosquito. It ain't going to happen. And besides that, viruses hang, for about 6 hours suspended because they're so small. I got kicked out of a grocery store, about 3 years ago. It was right after all that. Guy was wearing a mask and gloves, and I said, or he wasn't wearing gloves, because I said, what kind of idiot wears a mask and no gloves? Well, then they brought gloves on board, and anyhow, but you can, I didn't change the scene. Here's what the next picture is showing. Look what controls it. This was a peer-reviewed medical journal. I'm showing you because people want to know, well, where'd you read that? I didn't get it out of the National Enquirer. That comes from this right here. Kind of scary. All right. The only good thing to come out of COVID was this. That is 3 years ago. I had just moved down here. I didn't believe the whole scam. Just got in my convertible. Man, it was nice going to Clearwater Beach. That's Clearwater Beach. March of 2020. Amen, amen. I don't want to drive anywhere because the people are crazy. Fortunately, I live 2.2 miles away from here. Don't ask me how I know that. I'll tell you. But, you know, what we need to do is tell them that the alligators have planted signs that runners move over to the side. You know, if they can just get the picture that there are alligators, but, you know, they're easy to tell apart because one you'll see later and one you'll see in a while. But what is the difference? Ha ha, I didn't promise you humor. You know, we take them as walks. The gator has a U-shaped snout, crocodile, the V, mainly fresh water. There you have it. All right, let's look at some true false. How about the CDC? You know what's interesting? They were looking at major reasons why Americans say they lack trust in the CDC. You know, and COVID helped, but I've been there for a long time, pre-2020. You know, I mean, I read this stuff and I go, are you kidding? Among the small number of people who said they had a high trust in the CDC, get a load of this. Top 2 reasons were they believe the CDC follows scientifically valid research, 94%, and have the scientific expertise, 92%. Are they kidding? I mean, you know, you want to ask these people, how stupid can you be? But they probably try to show you. You know, that's the problem. All right, this is where I wanted my mask, but I got talking to one of you in the break and I didn't get to go out to my car and get my mask. All right, the Cochrane report was published in January. Said the masks didn't do any good. Notice what I used here. I used the New York Times. How do you get more liberal than that? This was on the op page, okay? Meaning it was an opinion page, and he wrote this. I mean, they were pushing the whole darn thing. The New York Times. And here he comes out and he says, the mask mandates did nothing. Will any lessons be learned? There's no limit to stupidity is the lesson to be learned. So then they retracted it, March 10th, just a little over 2 weeks ago. Well, you know, we didn't really say that because they got so much heat. What they said was, you know, we didn't say that, but it might work at stopping some of it. You know, then I said, yeah, October 10th, somebody told me about this, and I had to go look it up. Sure enough, there it is. This is an Oregon state official giving an update on the whole COVID situation. I think it's appropriate. She's dressed like a clown. You know, I'm sorry, Claire, you know, but what a lame excuse. She said it was Halloween, and that's why she was wearing the clown mask. You know, then we've got these drive-through vaccinations. All right, several of you have said that. Look at that. Isn't it amazing? God forgot your immune system. God, why? Because we got the FDA. You know, they granted emergency authorization for the COVID-19 vaccination in children as young as 6 years. All right? I used to do a topic on vaccinations, and I did it in Christian groups, and I got a call from a TV station. This would have been in 2004. I opened it up thinking, do I really want to mention that? Am I anti-vax? No, I'm pro-information. You make the decision. I got a phone call from a TV station. Yeah, we'd like to interview you for this. And, I understand you got, well, somebody had told them that I didn't. I said, well, I got to respectfully decline. You'll make me look like an idiot. That was 2004. Because where I'm going with that is what's coming up. Now, look at this. Published medical research. If you did not get the jab, you are more likely to be an accident threat. Yeah, you think I shake my head and I go, what? All right. I'm not going to tell you to lie. But if you're asked, if you go to a medical provider, and I'm sure many of you do, if you're asked if you are current on your vaccine, or have you had, just say, are you asking me if I'm current on my vaccinations? And say yes, because you're as current as you're going to get, right? Don't lie to them. I just haven't been to an allopathic doctor in 45 years, so it's like, why would they ask me? My mom hasn't either. My mom's 90. No medications. Wasn't the genes. Was not the genes. She's got an older and younger sister, both dead. My dad's dad died at 52 from a heart attack. His brother at 56 from a heart attack. His mom, 70 from diabetes. My dad was in perfect health when he died at 77. But I put him on supplements in 82. I didn't quit smoking until 88, so I was smoking. But anyhow, what about ventilators? You see, some of these topics were a little bit raw because of what's going on in the church. I just want you to question. I'm not telling you not to. Now you know why I gave the disclaimer. How necessary are they? And I could go much deeper, but I didn't want to go there. All right, what about excess deaths? Now it's leaking out, that all these people are dying. All these athletes are dying. What gets me is this, how many pages was it? I didn't read them all. 450,000 page document. You know what? Those clowns at the FDA approved the COVID vaccination in less than 30 days. But they wanted 75 years to release. There were over 1,200 reported adverse effects in there. Yeah, think you've been lied to? You see, what I want you to do is the alarm clock's ringing right now. I want you to wake up, realize God didn't lie to you. You were fearfully and wonderfully made. Just get right with them. I'm going to skip over the RSV. Probably our next coming, if it's not bird, RSV, they're prepping us for it. Then we got a president that signed over our next pandemic response is going to be handled by the WHO. Okay? Yep. Negotiates deal to give WHO authority over U.S. pandemic policies. WHO considers COVID shots one of the most successful and cost-effective public health interventions. The Department of Defense came out just a few weeks ago and they said, well, we have a low confidence level in the excess death explanation. You got to be careful who you trust. God didn't screw up. Look at this. Where am I going with this? You're not pregnant. You didn't eat a bagel. You know what? They tested positive for poppies. How many people, please don't raise your hand, tested yourself for COVID in the last umpty-ump? You think it might be positive? Because of COVID. This is SARS-19, okay? That means there's 18 predecessors of the coronavirus. 18. There is crossover reactivity. This is why I brought up pork. You see, these ladies ate poppy seeds. They tested positive for opioids. And they got a greeting from the DEA. COVID tests are the same thing. How true is that? Never take a pill. It has more side effects. All right, let's take another one. How our prescription drugs kill us in large numbers. Ooh. All right. Third leading cause of death after heart disease and cancer. How many people do they kill there? You can't poison the body healthy. Chemo is a derivative of mustard gas from World War II. World War I. One of them. Anyhow, let's kill the cancer before we kill the patient. This is kind of interesting. He's going into a little bit more on it, but I want to move on. This is, medical stuff, about medical errors are third leading cause of death in the U.S. I say if you look at their treatment, see, it's okay to kill somebody as long as you're following protocol. I'm serious. It's okay to kill somebody as long as you follow protocol. That's why they used ventilators, with COVID. Well, we were following protocol. Yeah, you were following protocol. So when we look at this, are medical errors really the third most common cause of death in the U.S.? They tried to poo-poo it, but look at that, science-based medicine. The other guys showed it in the numbers. 2 employees on leave after Ohio hospital gives kidney to wrong patient. Whoops. They said they were sorry, though, and, did the next one. So kind of interesting where we are. Let's take a look at a history of medicine. 2000 BC, here, eat this root. How true it is, huh? Now they're talking about MRSA-resistant bacteria that even their strongest, I remember in the 90s hearing this. I still lived in Denver, and I spent 20-some years in Minnesota, so that was by way of that. So when we look at this, take a look at where this comes from. Abbott Labs. What am I trying to show you? That when you look at costs and charges for the malnourished versus the well-nourished patient, they're a fraction. So if you're going to go to the hospital unexpectedly, make sure you're nourished before you go. You're going to make a better recovery. I mean, the concussion I gave myself, whew, I can't even imagine. I was out cold for at least a half hour, maybe an hour, I don't know. All I know is there was a huge pool of blood. I probably broke this bone here. Did I go get it set? Are you kidding? I was not going to go. If you're, no, there's no displacement. I'm good to go. Point being here, even if you have to go in for surgery, be nourished. My people are destroyed from lack of knowledge. Take the green pill to feel hunky, the yellow pill to feel dory. All right, let's keep going. The use of cholesterol. How many, don't raise your hand, how many here are on a statin or a cholesterol-lowering drug? Half. That's the statistics. Cholesterol's bad. It runs in the family. Cholesterol ain't bad. God didn't screw up. I don't have time to develop the story on how it got to be, but it was a PhD at the University of Minnesota. Ansel Keys, you can look it up if you care to look at the story. He fudged data. He took 22 countries, and he picked 7 countries that he could get a straight line to show the correlation between saturated fat and heart disease. That's cooking the data. It's been proved. All right, read what it says there. You can see it right there. About possible errors. Oops. This is especially true for women for whom moderately elevated cholesterol by current standards may prove to not only be harmless, but even beneficial. Now, this is their journals. All right, look at this. I had to calculate this because this was a European general, and the numbers on the chart are reported in European standards. But right there, the blue is men. Notice how there's kind of a U shape. U-shape meaning there was a decrease in mortality and a slow rise coming back. Women, it was a straight line, meaning there was less death as they approached a cholesterol of 270. Now, I'm not saying let your cholesterol go, not for a minute. I want to know the ratio. I want to know what your triglycerides are. I want to know what your HDL, LDL, and all the nanoparticles are. I want to know more than just that. So don't take me at this and quit your statins. But you're going to see that inflammation is going to cause this problem. For decades, here's another article. Mainstream view has been that an elevated level of total cholesterol is a primary cause of atherosclerosis. What they said is, horse hockey. Here's another one. A nonlinear association of total cholesterol with all cause and cause-specific mortality. Read the conclusion where I underlined it. In other words, it's a U-shaped curve for men, linear for women. Right here. Nonlinear association, total cholesterol level with all cause cancer. Because you get your cancer too low, or your cholesterol too low, you're going to improve your chance of getting cancer. You're also going to improve your chance of getting Alzheimer's. It's the kind of fats, you see, and I don't have time to develop that idea. You know, the kind of fats I use. Cholesterol mortality. This was a follow-up to the Framingham study. Many of you may have heard or not heard about the Framingham. They always quote it. But, you know, what I found funny in reading this was, this guy, Castelli, having to swallow. There was two groups. Those who consumed large amounts of animal fat and cholesterol were compared with those who consumed very little. 40 years after the start of this study, its director reluctantly admitted, but that didn't make the press. That won't sell drugs. I like that, Mark Twain. All right, this is a good one. Salt's bad, right? Jesus was the salt of the earth. Salt bad. All right, if you're not using Celtic sea salt or Himalayan salt, tune out, all right, because salt is bad. Good. Meet this patient. I won't even say her name. I've got it blocked. What happened was she came to me on several medications, couldn't get her hypertension under control. I told her to use sea salt and water. Her cardiologist called me up, wanted to know if I was some sort of F-bomb idiot. I said, Dr. Party Mouth, you eat with that mouth. I said, she can discontinue my regimen anytime she wants if the blood pressure goes up. SS means sea salt. Notice how it came down when she did it. But you see, she was still feeling pressure, to stay with it. But long story short, we did get it under control. Point is, salt does not cause. Cholesterol does not cause. It's the type you use and where you go. Then they talk about salt replacements now. Don't use them. They're potassium chloride, and they're just as bad. All right? You see, the problem with most salt, even if your bottle says sea salt, is they heated it up to 1,800 degrees, pulled off all the minerals, and all you have is sodium chloride, NaCl. And they took all the minerals from you. It's kind of like your bread. Oh. Not Kirk's fault. I just pointed at Kirk. I wanted to have a loaf of Wonder Bread up here. And at this point is when I was going to collapse it. Because what I was going to do is squish it down to the size of a baseball. But you see, so picture that Wonder Bread. That's where all this stuff is at. So what you're getting is sodium chloride. Wow, okay. There it is. So what? Morton salt substitute, new salt, and others. What's interesting is this comes from, you can see it right there. I picked their slide. What you're going to see come in is Greg. But this is from Heart Failure, the Journal Heart, Medscape, etc. Okay? Mortality means death. The lower the number, the better. Let's put the goalposts up. Look at where it's the lowest. Death is the lowest. Right around 140, which is where I want to see it. Is lower better? These are people that stand up and they can't, woo! They get lightheaded. They need to wear sunglasses on an overcast day. They don't have fingerprints. Come on, look, see if you got fingerprints. I was at an MD integrative medicine, or Mayo Clinic MD integrative seminar, and the head of their integrative medicine department came up, and he had sunglasses on top of the head. Foggy day, raining. I said, "You don't have fingerprints, do you?" No. That's why they take 10, because most don't. What's my connection? You know how stress makes us look old? Cortisol upregulates elastin, which breaks down collagen, which breaks down, you get it? That's why you don't have fingerprints. That's why they have to take 10. These are things that we will be talking about down the road, and we can get there. So this isn't Greg. Reduce salt intake for heart failure. Limited evidence of clinical improvement was available among outpatients who reduced dietary salt. Okay? Limited. Reviews suggest well-designed, adequately powered studies are needed to read. They didn't want to see, the first thing I look at is who's funding their study. That's the first thing I look at when I read these things. Moreover, like many other dogmatic statements that were fully embedded in cardiovascular medicine, for example, suppression of premature ventricular contractions, avoidance of beta blockers, all of these things, there is simply too much uncertainty. Look at Gatorade. You ever had your doctor tell you not to use Gatorade? Look what's in it. Sodium chloride. What's the difference? Why don't you take some filtered water, put a pinch of sea salt in it, and squeeze a lemon? What I do is, and through the ministry, we will be offering ways to get some of this stuff at discount. I use a Berkey water filter. It's expensive. But we're going to try to get discounts and make that available. But what I'm going to do in the summer is I'm going to take my water, I'm going to add a pinch of salt, but every morning I draw a big pitcher, about like that, and I squeeze a lemon in it. Well, actually, it's a whole lemon, but why not? I mean, you've read about the benefits of lemon water. Why not do it? Why not put a pinch of sea salt? When you're outside and it's hot and all of that, I'm going to put a pinch of sea salt in it. All right, look at this. Trisodium phosphate. It's in our food. It's an industrial cleaner, and I could pick on any other of the little things. I am going to pick on beaver anal glands. What? That's a natural flavor. Did you get a dose of it? It's used for vanilla and strawberry flavors. It can say natural flavor. And it came from beaver anal glands. Oh, that makes you want to go out and make sure you know where your ice cream's coming from, doesn't it? How about Starbucks? You see, I'm not trying to pick on any company, but they were caught with colchicea, which is a beetle, and they make a red dye. And they were appealing to the vegans, and I won't go to Starbucks, by the way, because I can't stand that goddess on the front of their cup. Sorry. But anyhow, they got busted because they were using colchicea, which is a natural red color. Artificial colors are really bad for you. And you see, when we talk about food and we get into it, I will cover these kind of things. I keep life very simple. I'm just trying to expose you to all this stuff now. You've seen that slide a couple times. Okay, and then I'm going to kind of call us a break. I got minutes. Probiotics might actually do you no good. And I'm serious, okay? I used to run 6, 7 comprehensive digestive stool analysis a week. What is that? You poop in a box, send it off, and, measure for all that stuff. I do things much simpler now. But it's microbiome. Microbiome is what's making you fat. Microbiome is what, is controlling your food cravings. I alluded to it once. Somebody once told me they couldn't lose weight, and they've done everything. They followed every diet. I know they didn't touch the microbiome. Remember I talked about Bernard Jensen? But you see, you can't buy anything over the counter because after the next couple slides, you won't. And I'm not going to sell it to you through my patient because then I got to pay taxes. But we're going to set it up. So if anybody knows an attorney who can set up a 501c, I want them to come forward, or send me an email because I want to set it up as a nonprofit before we offer these things to you, through our online store. So it's going to be there. Probiotics. Oh, that some B vitamins come from sewage sludge? That's natural. You can publish one study and say, B vitamins don't work. Yeah, they do. Well, yeah, take a look at all the different sources of B vitamins. It might be thiamine, okay, B1. Thiamine mononitrate, thiamine hydrochloride, thiamine pyrophosphate. Which kind do you want? Thiamine pyrophosphate. But it's expensive. And you see, you can go to your one-a-day and say, well, this has got everything that does, and it's a fraction of the cost. Yeah, but it may not be doing you any good, and it may be doing you harm. Let's look at calcium. All right? This woman has osteoporosis. She came to me right before I moved out of Minnesota. Look at her calcium level. Right in the middle of the range, right? She's got osteoporosis. So what do? Give her calcium, right? Forget what the blood says. Because she's got osteoporosis. Look at this. Maybe there's more to the picture. Remember something called alkalinity? You see, I'm old enough to remember the mantra, alkalize or die. And you see, what you're going to see in osteopenia and osteoporosis is you're going to see acid bodies. The blood has to be 735 to 745. Skip that. You don't need to know it. There's no test at the end of this. But anyhow, that's a very narrow range for blood pH. You get outside of that pH, you're dead. Your body will do, it's called allostasis. It will do what it needs to do to balance that blood pH. It'll pull calcium from the bone. So it's floating around in her bloodstream. Her calcium is normal. But you see, look at this. Calcium is associated with Alzheimer's. Oh, I thought it was picking your nose. I thought it was methylation. Oh, or this is cardiovascular elevation. And I remember reading that and I thought, well, yeah, you didn't touch vitamin D. I really rarely recommended calcium because calcium is everywhere. It's in your orange juice. And especially in Minnesota, it's in the soil. We have, limestone and, all that other stuff. And here we got lots of coral and things like that that are going to break down. So vitamin D becomes important. But how do you know how good your vitamin D is? How do you know how good your calcium is? Maybe it's chalk, calcium carbonate. That's cheap. You just can't absorb it. All right? Nutrition and healthy eating. The reason I put that in there is they just upped the RDA for calcium to 1,300 milligrams per day. They just upped it. Why? Because people are getting more acid. When you get in the fight or flight, your body's going to get acid. It turns on the fight or flight mechanism with the adrenals. So guess what? Your body's doing what it's supposed to do. Where's it going to get the calcium? From the bone. That's why they're osteopenic and osteoporotic, but they just don't check men because it's not important. It doesn't involve the guys. I highlighted verapamil because how do they treat high blood pressure? Calcium channel blocker. Look at this. Now they're going to use verapamil for kids. This just was published last week or the week before. Reveals new use for high blood pressure drug. And, it's so true, isn't it? Why would you do it? Kids are stressed. What all that's going on with their masks and what that did and everything. I mean, seriously, what it did. All right, what about levothyroxine? A number of you are on thyroid, Synthroid. Causes cancer. I want to skip over that. Here we go. Drug companies, payments and gifts affect physicians' prescribing. It's time to turn off the spigot. Really? That's been published for years. You know, your doctor wasn't trained to handle nutrition. You think? Then they want to pretend. You know, it used to be fun because my patients would say, oh, you know, I need to add a few. I haven't been adding the chips. You see, I haven't lectured live in a while. And you get the idea. I just put some negative things. You took calcium, you took all these other things that are going to cause ill health. It's a delicate balance in where you get. But state of the art, they don't get it. Then you see this kind of garbage. Look at that. Processed food is making supplements unnecessary. I can't make this stuff up. And it's from your home state. Remember our link letter? All right. Dietary supplements. I mean, look at this. Quality control measures seem to be insufficient for most of these selected. I worked for a company for 14 years as a nutraceutical rep, had a practice, spoke nationally. You know, you better believe the things that I'm going to offer. You know, I'll private label them. I talked to 2 people about it. It'll carry our label, but I have to get the 501c set up because I just don't want to deal with issues. I need a board and all that other stuff. So I apologize, but what they're basically saying is your supplements are no good. And I'm going to tell you that same thing. Don't waste your money. People say, why do you take fish oil? Are you sure? How do you know it didn't sit out at sea for 6 months before they brought it in? You see, they get this. How do you know it wasn't cooked before you got it? Because some companies will cook the fish and then, what about heavy metals? It goes on and on and on and on. And, you know, here, very important to know all the requisite information on nutritional supplements. They're talking about the synthetic, you know, oxide minerals and all that other stuff that's in there. I already told you some of it's going to come from sewage sludge. Nice B vitamin, but it's natural. There are 2 ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true. The other is to refuse to accept what is true. All right, let's talk about inflammation, and then we got to take a break. I'm going to blow through it. Who isn't affected by inflammation? All right, you saw that on the inner circle of my model. Inflammation causes everything, including Alzheimer's again. But inflammation causes pain. My friends at the CDC, you know what gets me as a friend. Kirk, you said I could tell him. You know, I went to see Kirk after he had his surgery in November. I walk into the hospital. Here's a can of Dr. Pepper, and he's whacked out on morphine or whatever they were giving him, and he's smiling ear to ear. He's got his. I didn't say a word, did I? And he's smiling. He says, "Yeah, I had a sweet roll the size of Texas this morning." And I'm thinking, and they want you to get well. How do you get any more inflammatory? You know, but look what the CDC says. For which there is no single underlying etiology. That means cause, okay, with inflammation. Could be your food. Maybe it's your acupuncture meridian. Maybe it's what you're breathing in the air. You see? Could be anything. But you want to lower it, which is why I eat the way I do, that if I'm going to eat cookies, I'm going to eat kale. Now I busted myself. Nobody's going to bring good snacks because they know what I'm going to be eating. Anthropogenic is just one of those terms like epimutagen, all that other stuff. But it's the sand in the gears. Look at this. What I have underlined is not all. That's taken right from their article. Most, if not all, diseases are inflammation. All right? Are you starting to see where I'm going? Maybe it's picking your nose. No, I mean, maybe it's inflammation. Maybe it's methylation. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's that. I don't know. But, you need to find somebody who's going to get to the root cause. Could dietary factors reduce COVID-19 mortality rates? Duh. Look at what in the lower right, where I have it underlined. Reduced significantly. They don't use terms like significant in medical journals unless it's significant. And they don't like to hear reduced when it comes to inflammation, because all you need to do is take a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, right? Acetaminophen, Tylenol, and I promise you we're going to close for break here in just a few minutes. Give me 2 more minutes. This is from the British Medical Journal, talking about all the side effects of non-steroidals, COX-2 inhibitors, are not an equal treatment with respect to efficacy. Then they're saying, parfetamol should be used in pregnant women. Well, maybe not, maybe oops. And this goes way back. 1 acetaminophen every 4 days increases risk of kidney disease 2.4 times. 1 ibuprofen every 4 days increases risk of kidney disease by 8.8 times. You think? That's from that article, from those articles. So we all have a physician. What I'm going to recommend is that let me just finish with this. This is lighthearted. And this is where we'll take the break. I got to where I wanted to be. Could save your life. We're going to talk about that a little bit more after we get back from break and we get towards the end. But let's take a break, and I'll see you back here in 10 minutes.